Terzak brought his culinary magic to Clearwater's Harborview Center in March of 1997. Prior to that, he owned and operated Metro Catering Company in Tampa, but Chef Terzak's experience reaches far outside the Tampa Bay area. He was executive chef at the American Stanhope Hotel on 5th Avenue in New York, and Gordon's, one of Chicago Magazine's top 10 restaurants in the Windy City. He owned 5 restaurants in Chicago. Among them, Terzak's, Chameleon, Ketchup, and Tamales. He's also consulted for top-rated restaurants in Florida, Virginia, Chicago, and New York. Chef Terzak studied culinary arts at Du Père School of French Cooking in Glenview, Illinois, and was acknowledged by Food and Wine magazine as one of the top 60 chefs in America. For years, he hosted the cable TV series Great American Cookout, but now he's the host of What's Cooking Harborview.
And welcome to another edition of What's Cooking Harborview. Now, today's a special edition because we have Mayor Brian Oakes with us, and after speaking to him about the kind of things we were going to cook on the show today, he suggested, I asked him, what are some of your favorite dishes? And he said, well, he loved beef Wellington. I said, well, we can handle that. And then he said, well, I love lobster. And I said, well, we can handle that. We'll make a little lobster salad. And I said, well, let me come up with a dessert. And I decided to come up with something that I think you might find interesting. And that is a little bit of the history of Jello, which was invented by the French. And we have a Jello dish that we're going to make today that's called raspberry timbali in gali with sauces. And so we're going to take Jello and turn it into something very pretentious. Sorry, Bill Crosby, but that's just the way it's going to have to be. But first, what I did was I made a beef Wellington so that we could get it baking in the oven so I can get one up here sliced later and show it to you. And I'm going to show you how to do this in a few minutes. And we're going to make the chicken liver paste that is inside the crust. And this is a simple puff pastry that you can buy in the supermarket. It looks just as pretty as ever, and I decorate it, and I'll show you a few decorating hints on it also. But for right now, we're going to bake it in an oven at 400 degrees until it gets brown for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then turn it down to 300. Cook it for maybe another 15 minutes, because we want to keep it medium rare if this is our chosen beef temperature that we want to eat. So I have some egg wash here, which is 4 egg yolks and a couple tablespoons of cream and a couple tablespoons of cold water. And we're going to splash that carefully along the pastry. And you want to be careful when you're decorating your pastry that you don't leave drip marks of egg yolk that dries on it, because it bakes like that and you have drip dried egg yolk spots on it when you're done. I'll just kind of dab it on, and I made a little flour there along the top. And Nikki, who's assisted on many of our shows in the past, is going to pop this in the oven for us at 400 degrees, and we'll take it out in a little while. So that's the lineup, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the chicken liver paste back here on the stove in a minute, and I'm going to take you back there right now, and we're going to go through the ingredients, and we're going to get that started. Let's go. All right, now in making the liver paste, not to be confused with pâté, which is typically served in pastry by itself. This is what we call pâte, which is spelled exactly like pâté but has different accents. And pâte means paste, which is the stuffing for pâtés. And so what we have here is some sautéed mushrooms and onions. And by the way, of course, you can send in and get the recipe if you can't follow it in a detailed way. We put about a half a pound of mushrooms and 1 onion in here and sautéed in some whole butter. And I added a little bit of dried leaf thyme now, and a little bit of garlic, or a lot of garlic, whatever you want. I hate to tell people how much garlic they can put in their food, you know. So you gotta remember to don't be burning your garlic. Put it in there the last part of when you're cooking the mushroom and onion, just before you're going to add the liquid, which is what we're going to do right now. And what I did was I took the chicken livers and I soaked them overnight in milk, because I want to neutralize a little bit of the fat and oils that sometimes can give an aftertaste to the pâté or the terrine you're making. So we're going to put 5 pounds of chicken livers in here with the mushroom and onion, which, by the way, only cost about $5, if that, you know. I love it when it can be good and inexpensive, which isn't very often. So we're going to add a little pepper to this, fresh ground, and a little bit of salt, And we're going to add a little bit of port wine or sherry. And we're going to add a little bit of heavy cream. About a cup of cream in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this cook either in the oven or on the stove, covered up with a pan until it's completely cooked. Then, once the chicken livers are completely cooked, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the lid, and then I'm going to reduce it down until it gets dry. And then we're going to puree it in the food processor. You want it dry so that when you put it into the pastry casing, the moisture from the liver doesn't make the pastry soggy, either before you bake it or during the time it's being baked. So we're going to let this cook, and then we're going to take the lid off, and we're going to let it dry out a little bit on the stove with the fire on a very low temperature. Then we're going to puree it. Now I'm going to take you back to the table, and we're going to assemble the beef Wellington, and I'll give you the final instructions on that. And we'll bring in Brian, the mayor, to give us a little tip on that. Okay, now, for the assembly of the Wellington, we're going to have to need the assistance, I think, of Mayor Brian Ungst, which is decided to come and join us today, and we're just thrilled to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting me. Welcome. Looking forward to it. One of my favorite shows.
Well, you know, he made me make this beef Wellington because this is one of his favorite dishes, and I was thrilled to when I found out, because I happened to have the opportunity to make a couple of thousand of them in the past, so I knew you'd like this one.
Absolutely. I look forward to eating this anytime it's on a menu. The problem is it's not on that many menus when you go out to restaurants, sometimes in banquet halls and whatever, so I want to learn how to make it for myself, for my wife and I, for special occasions, because it's such a nice dish.
Well, today you're going to have it. Let me take you walk you through the steps, and for the people at home, remember, this dish is normally made with filet of beef. What I did was I took a tenderloin of beef and I kind of trimmed it for the size of the mold that I was going to put it into. And then I seasoned it with salt and pepper, and I browned it in a saute pan on the stove for about a minute and a half, just to give it a little brown flavor on the outside. Then I refrigerated it. And remember, when you assemble this dish, everything must be cold so that the pastry is handleable. And mainly that's the reason right there. So let's get started. First, by rolling out the sheet of puff pastry. Now this is a standard size, which is 10 by 15 inches, that you can buy in any supermarket, and they come folded up frozen. All the major pastry companies have one of these items in the market.
You put flour on both sides so it doesn't stick?
Correct. A little flour on both sides, and roll it just slightly, because you don't want to get it too thin now. As you can see how thin that is, see?
Yep. Nice and thin.
Now you take your mold. Now you can use a bread pan loaf. I happen to have a tureen mold here that I'm using, and I lined it with foil because I don't want the pastry to stick to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stuff the pastry into the mold carefully, making sure that at no point during the handling of the pastry does the pastry get stretched. Because if it gets stretched, when you bake it, it stretches back. So we're going to kind of anchor it down in there carefully.
One question, you talked about browning. When you brown it for a minute and a half, you just turn each side?
Just all the way around, correct. Okay, now our liver paste, which I showed you how to make earlier, which is still cooking, by the way, I completely pureed the food processor, and then I added 6 egg yolks to my 5 pound of chicken livers. And that will help it set and not be a little bit runny when we bake it in the pastry. So we're going to start out by putting chicken liver paste in the bottom of the pastry mold. And we're going to spread it around down there. The name of the game here is to get the beef into the mold and have it completely surrounded by the liver paste, so that when you slice it, you see it? When you slice it, it's in the middle of the liver and not just on one side of it. So we're going to pack a little bit of liver inside the mold all the way around it. Now see, if this pastry was a little bit warm, and it having so much oil and butter in it, the type of pastry that it is, it would start to puncture very easily. And then you end up with a bunch of holes in your Wellington, and you don't want that.
That would kill the effect a little.
It would. Now you can put, if you're not a big fan of liver, you can take chopped mushroom and onion that you wring out nice and dry and use that instead of the liver. Or you can add that on top of this. 1 layer liver, 1 liver chopped mushroom and onion if you want.
So do you do this three-sided, or you cover the top part too?
All four sides, right.
Okay. So when you cut in, you'll find it on either side. It's always one of the nice touches of a beef Wellington.
Now, the 5 pounds of chicken livers that I use, which sounds like a lot, that's all that's left from the 2 Wellingtons that I made. Now, we're going to take a little bit of egg wash, because we're going to seal this up. And we want to bring the seam right over. Now, one of the things to remember about the reason that you have this mold is so that you can shape it into something. Otherwise, it has a tendency to take on its own shape when you bake it. So I can press this right into the mold, see? It makes it the same shape as the mold. Being careful I don't press it too hard. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little piece of parchment paper or aluminum foil, and we'll turn the molded thing out. And at this point right here, remembering the ends of the pastry ultimately will be cut off anyway. We're just going to take a little pizza cutter, cut those ends off. And let's make sure that she's nice and square. It looks good. Now, one thing about all of these kinds of dip pastries when you bake them is that it needs an escape outlet for the steam. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build a little chimney right in the middle of this by cutting out a piece of pastry and then cutting another piece of pastry for decoration.
And this is the escape outlet for the steam. What does that do for you?
That prevents the pastry from getting soggy or the pressure of the heat busting the pastry.
Okay.
You see?
Good tip there. I would not have known that.
Yes, that's not a, that's pretty standard when you're cooking anything at this temperature level, with puff pastry particularly. Now, you can choose to decorate this any number of ways. For example, first you can start by egg washing the entire thing. And I'm going to give a couple of quick decorations here because we don't have too much time today with all these delicious things we're making, So we're going to move on quickly in terms of the decorating part. But one of the things you can do is you can take, say, your pizza cutter, and you can make little crisscrosses. Okay. Dump them in your egg wash, and you can.
Okay. That was rather simple. Nice effect, though.
If you can spend more time and make them extra nice. You can cut out little. These are my scraps from the one I made earlier, by the way, that we're about to slice. You can make little half moons or crescents to decorate. And you can just make little zigzags on here too, like this. This is what they call scoring the pastry. And that kind of bakes off like that, sort of nice. Now, if you have little cutters with hearts and spades, clubs, and diamonds and things like that, you can put them on there too. And that's basically it, right there. There's your beef Wellington in a nutshell. Of course, there's the individual version, which you can make. But this is more for a little party of 5 or 6. Now, I'm going to clean house here just a touch, and we're going to slice the one that I baked in the oven. We're going to see if any of this stuff that I have to say is the truth.
Sounds good to me.
Now this, I took out of the oven. This is the one we put in the oven at the beginning of the show. And we're going to slide it off of the paper.
These decorations make a nice little presentation.
Oh, it's beautiful. If you bring this out to the little sideboard in your dining room with the roast knife to give to your guests, you would own them for the rest of the evening.
Nobody's going to want to eat it after looking at it like this.
I don't know about that. Let's see what it looks like inside. Now, the kind of sauce you might want to serve with this is whatever your favorite mushroom or red wine sauce is. I made a little red wine sauce with it that I'll share with you later. Let's serve with this. Let's start with this piece right here. Well, I better take a peek first to make sure it's good. There's a lot of liver in that one. Now, one of the things I didn't tell you about that I did in this one that I didn't do in the other one is I took 3 individual fillets and put them together. There we go. Let's see what that looks like. There's a little fillet there.
There's a nice big chunk.
Piece there.
Yeah, that's very
And there's a nice piece here. So let's take this piece here, put it right on the plate. Boom. Can you get a close-up in on that one?
Perfectly cooked. Just how I like it.
Now, let's say you have 3 or 4 guests that like their filet medium rare, and then one that likes it medium well. And what you do is you take the slice, cover it with foil, put it on a little pie pan or something, and bake it in the oven by itself after you make this, you know? And then I would put enough sauce to go all the way around this. And some little kind of green garnish, some watercress. I got some fresh tarragon here. Just kind of nice. What do you think so far?
It looks great so far. And this is the kind of thing, normally when you cook on the show, you do things that people can do fairly quickly. This is going to take a little more time, but it's certainly worth the effort. If you were going to throw a dinner party or a special birthday for your spouse or someone, how long would it take from start to finish to do this? And is there a lot of preparation time, or can you do it from scratch?
I would say making the paste, browning the beef, rolling it out, putting it in the thing, an hour.
Well, that's not that bad at all.
For me, I could probably do it in 40 minutes, and maybe for you, an hour and a half. Sure. Right in there somewhere, you know?
But you spend a lot of time on meals like that anyway, so it's not something that you can't do once you learn it. It's something that you can do and make a special meal, and it would be probably something someone might not have for years after that, right?
I want you to duplicate this, and I want to know the results.
We'll do that.
All right? All right, we're going to be back in a minute with a lobster salad. Brian wanted to try some lobster. I said, let's try some Nouvelle lobster salad. We'll be right back with that. Brian, we're back with that lobster salad. You ready?
I am ready. I am looking forward to this dish. This looks like a nice one.
This was another one of your requests, and we're going to call this the speediest Royale salad you ever had, a very royal salad, because all the ingredients are so rich and delicious and expensive, and depending on where you're shopping, of course. We're going to start with, I have a cooked 1.25 pound lobster here, which is cooked by being plunged into boiling water, and then when the water recuperates and comes back to a simmer, for every pound of lobster, you cook it for 5 minutes. Then you take it out and plunge it in the cold water. Then you got your cold lobster, and you can prepare that ahead of time. Now, I cracked the claws a little bit so we can get at the meat, but let me show you a little presentation trick here. First, you take the tail off, and you cut the tail in half. Whoop. Now, one of the things that you don't want to do when you're putting out the lobster is you don't want to wash away the flavor of the ocean from that tail. You don't rinse this off now. You want that briny lobster flavor to be in there. Now we're going to take them claws off. Now we're going to open up the lobster like this, so it will stand on the plate. You see? Then we'll take our lobster claws and set them up in the front.
That way you have no question what you're serving, right?
No
so you can
question.
see what they're eating, right?
You can put some little garnish of the claw meat on there.
Now, I like this. You talked about this being a speedy dish. We have the beef Wellington, which takes a little more time. You can still have a world-class meal without having too much time taken. The beef Wellington took most of the time, but this is quicker. That'll make a very nice presentation and a great way to start the meal, right?
Yes. This also can be made ahead and put in the fridge and just unveiled by having it covered with some plastic wrap. Now, what we'll do is this here. We're going to do some fresh cucumber, avocado, papaya, and a little bit of lettuce. Now, let's do this here. Let's pull these back. Let's put a little lettuce right here, so we give these lobster tails a little bit of dimension. Okay? There's nothing worse than a flat salad. And we'll slice up some cucumber.
Better him than me here.
And we will make ourselves a little, just a quick little layout on that. Like so. And we'll take a little bit of papaya. Slice that up. Gonna lay that in there. This is nice pink, ripe Hawaiian papaya too, which is nice.
It's very nice.
And let's take a little bit of fresh avocado. Scoop that right out of the shell. Like so.
Is it that easy to do? Is that years of practice?
It's that easy to do. Just as long as the avocado isn't 100% mushy, you're okay. Then we'll cut the avocado up. Slide that in here behind the papaya. And let's put a little bit of tomato. And a little bit of purple onion. Louisiana onion. This isn't an onion-laden kind of dish at all. We'll put a little bit of scallion on here. And we got a few nice little raspberries we'll put in here for garnish, because that certainly goes with the exotic ingredient list here, I would say.
You've got the colors, you've got the rainbow effect a little bit here, and
a few berries on there, and I think we're going to have one extra one here. There we go. And then, what am I missing here? A little bit of chopped parsley. And let's take what happened to our olive oil bottle? Let's take a little bit of olive oil and spray it right onto the food, like that. I got some nice extra virgin here. And we'll squeeze a little bit of lemon on here, or lime, or both. Or you can put some kind of mayonnaise dressing on the side to dip this with. Voila! Lobster Royale in 5 minutes.
5 minutes, a great dish, great way to start the beef Wellington or whatever else, right?
Right. We're going to be back with the remake, the redo of Jello. Alrighty, we're back with Jello.
Jello, everybody's favorite right now.
There's always room for Jello, no matter how big of a meal you have. And I just thought it would be a really unique thing for those of you at home and you, Brian, to see that Jello really isn't what we thought it was, and that the French invented this specialty gelatinized form of dessert that they elaborated on it and made it all kinds of fancy ways. And I made a couple of fancy ways just to show you what I mean. First of all, how was that lobster, by the way?
Very nice. Nice way to start.
Cool. And what we're going to do is we're going to have, Brian's going to fill a couple of Jello molds for us here with some raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, and some red Cygnus grapes. And I'm going to talk to you about how to make the Jello, okay? Why don't you do that for us, and let me get that Jello over here. Now, what I have here is some simple syrup, a couple of cups of sugar, and 1 quart of water. And that is the basis for the Jello. And then what I did was I took some unflavored gelatin and dissolved it in water in accordance with the directions on the package. And then we're just going to slide this into the hot water. And the hot water will dissolve that instantly and make it clear. Now, our particular gelatin, what I did was I steeped some star anise in the hot liquid. I added some fresh squeezed lemon juice. I added a touch of grenadine, which is actually pomegranate syrup, a South American fruit. Give it a little bit of color. And I added a little bit of pure vanilla extract. And then I had my Jello base, which isn't really the basis for the dessert. It's just this thing that you put a little flavor into to hold the nice fruits together, in this particular case. So we've got, you made one of these, what we call timbales, and that's the name of this type of mold, full of fruit there. And it looks like we're ready to fill that up. So just pour your hot liquid in there. You guys know how to do this part anyway, all right, but I have to do it. Okay, and then you put it in the refrigerator and you let it set. And that's what we've done here. And now we turn this out. You see, come on out of there. Come on out of there.
That's a stubborn one.
Well, I have a, how do you say it? I have one advantage over the timbale. It can't think. Okay. We will take our little knife here. and I guarantee you it's coming out. There we go.
There we go.
Now, as you can see, what I did was I took some of the Jello and I chopped it up and put it around another one. And I did a little trick on the plate here, which I hope you can zoom in on, which is kind of neat. And what I did was, first I poured some Jello on the plate. Then I let it sit. Then I cut the Jello and removed part of it and took some of the Jello and added some melon or creme de menthe liqueur to it and then filled it back into those spots. This is melon Jello and grenadine Jello as the base of the plate just for decoration, and you can also eat it. Now we'll take our Jello mold and set it right in the middle. Now, so here we got two Jello plates. How do they look so far?
Very good. Very good.
And I'll need that whipped cream, Nikki, to finish these off. And with this one over here, we're going to do a little bit of raspberry sauce. Oh, yes.
This is a nice light way to end the meal. It's still very tasty, very healthy.
Now we're going to take a little bit of whipped cream, and what I did was I put raspberries and blueberries all the way around the perimeter of the plate, which is very Baroque French style in terms of how it's presented, which is how this dish was partially developed. And nothing, of course, besides marshmallows, goes better with Jello than whipped cream. So we'll put a little bit of whipped cream around there like that. And as long as we got the bag out here, we'll throw a little bit over here too.
So another nice presentation of your dessert this time.
And I think we can do a little of this too, as long as we're at it. And I think we can, where's the powdered sugar at? I say we go with a little bit of powdered sugar here over this plate, like that. And let's try a little bit over here. Now, if you want to put a little powdered cocoa on here, or serve this with a basket of assorted nice tender cookies or pirouettes or even peppered shrimp, which I love, this would be great. And a little custard sauce or even ice cream on the side.
Bring that out, that'll bring the oohs and ahs from the guests. After the Wellington and the lobster salad, what a perfect way to end the meal.
I just think it's hilarious, though, that this is Jello. Don't you?
It's not your typical Jello. Very nice.
Well, you and I think, going to have to sit down and eat some of this. We don't have time to do that together in front of you, but we are going to. And Brian, it's really been a pleasure for you being on. And
maybe bring me back sometime for a refresher course.
I would love that.
All right.
You heard it.
I'll be here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We will see you next month with another edition of What's Cooking Harborview. And thanks for tuning in. Bye bye.